Coming up, the offseason rolls on and the rumors continue to swirl. What could Cleveland be trying to do to keep Donovan Mitchell as a member of the Cavs? Darius Garland, young star waiting to be relieved of his issues in that same town? We dive in on the conundrum that is Cleveland, all coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Adam Armbrecht. Over there is MVP and best teammate Doug Norrie. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Helps find you the qualified candidates faster that you want to talk to. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they do apply. And Doug, yes, the conundrum that is Cleveland, but also how it relates back to Brooklyn and them trying to improve this roster this offseason.
Well, nothing in the NBA is better than your team was just eliminated, and now everyone's allowed to write all the things that they've been waiting all season to sit on so that to not cause problems. And that's just like exactly what we got with Cleveland. It's the best time of year. You just wait for the team to get eliminated, and then everyone hates the coach. I mean, this is these players don't get along. We knew it all along. Like, this guy's not going to play with this guy. This guy didn't think anyone took anyone seriously. It's just the best. Just like the absolute brain dump around it. Cavs no different. A few, 48 hours removed from, or 24 hours really removed from missing or getting out of the playoffs. And everyone just comes out of the woodwork with all the people that are unhappy and all the stuff that could happen and who can stay and who can move. And it's great. And this is where we land. And, we can talk about some of the different stuff here, but now it seems like Donovan Mitchell getting traded might not necessarily be a foregone conclusion. And an interesting report from Shams that just says, maybe Darius Garland's on the move.
Well, we talked about this. Yeah, it's the carcass that is NBA teams or any professional sports team, right? After you've been eliminated, well, we might as well come around here. We can all be kind of buzzards about this and start picking, seeing what we like. It is funny how, depending on the way you look at it perceptually, Donovan Mitchell, this entire season has been about, well, eventually, we all know it's all leading to him wanting out. Unless they go to the NBA Finals, there's no way that he's going to stay. Of course. But if you're Cleveland and you hear the reports and everyone kind of expected, they'd love to keep him. They'd love for him to stay with the team and try to build around him. They continue to push the idea of, well, what would we need to do? What would we need to change? And you mentioned when you hear the reports that Donovan Mitchell was not thrilled with the dedication, the focus, the drive, the determination, all these things about every or several other players on the roster. Okay, that means it opens the door. Now, whether or not that's the right way to go about, hearing about how teammates were operating together or whether or not the talent level is there, it opens that door for Cleveland to say, well, who don't you want here? Who's not good enough? What can we change? As opposed to Donovan Mitchell doesn't want to be in Cleveland. He'd prefer to play somewhere else. Well, you can't do anything about that. You can change if it's that he likes it there and he just needs to see changes to the players around him to make him feel like he can be successful.
And the best part about that, piece of information is then you get like the competing piece, which is, that comes from Trania, where it says the Cavs are going to seriously evaluate the fit between Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. And this is a quote. I'm from Shams. I'm told if Mitchell does decide to stay long-term, Garland's representation, they would have a conversation about the potential of a new home for him.
Yeah.
And this, does at least, that's a really definitive quote, right? Like that's a well-sourced guy putting out information that is a well-crafted quote about, and with like no real subtext to it at all. It's like, oh, if he stays, I want to go. I don't want to play with these guys. These guys don't want to play together anymore. And I don't know if you're Cleveland, you look at that situation and Donovan Mitchell came out also and said that he was happy, right? Like that he was, and now again, this is kind of the stuff you say, and right. He never asked out of Utah either, and he might want to keep his record clean around asking for trades, right? Because he's been pretty good about this so far. And so it does open up this like really weird set of possibilities. I think that like a lot of people, I think the foregone conclusion was he was gone. I don't know if that's a foregone conclusion now. And then it does open up a world of like what Darius Garland's value is or isn't on that current contract and what would best serve Cleveland. Because I don't know, like we're looking at a situation, I mean, with the Nets, with Garland, if Mitchell isn't available, I guess we're asking, is Garland a pivot? Like, is Garland a guy that they would see as a pivot? I'm not sure they would, but they also might be stuck holding a bag that they thought was going to kind of land in their lap, and it's not going to. It might not now.
Well, and that's the other interesting part, right? So the last time we talked about Cleveland and what was going on, we discussed how the Brooklyn Nets, as Brian Windhorst reported, have an offer ready. They are ready to put the offer in for Donovan Mitchell. So now we've confirmed, okay, the Brooklyn Nets want to go this route. Now, all of a sudden, if it's going to be a pivot from Cleveland or that Donovan Mitchell is happy there and they're going to try to figure something out, well, then from a Brooklyn perspective, it is, oh, we were going all in, at least on Donovan Mitchell. We were going all in on spending a lot of assets potentially to go get a player to reshape this roster. So you can speculate on which players were going to be included or not, or how many picks, but you also have to remember, so it's two parts. On the Darius Garland side of it and the Cleveland side, I think it's interesting that you mentioned Donovan Mitchell. Well, you kind of see how it's played out for like a Kevin Durant. He's a superstar. He's an elite talent. We know how good he is. Also, his reputation has slowly been diminished as every stop along the way says, okay, I'm all good here, get me out. Okay, I'm all good here, get me out. So Mitchell's probably, guarding against that. Darius Garland is sitting there saying, I'm 24 years old. I'm trying to protect, like I'm already being looked at as the sour egg on Cleveland that's holding back Donovan Mitchell. I don't want to be known as that guy. I need to maybe find a better path so that I can go ahead and have a better career. Brooklyn's side of it is all the players on the roster. Was it me? Were you sending me out in that package for Donovan Mitchell? Because it wasn't just going to be picks. So I think all of a sudden it blows up classically in the Brooklyn Nets way where it's, oh, so I guess maybe we shouldn't have made it. A lot of get slipped out there that we were ready to make a big offer for Donovan Mitchell because now some of these guys are still going to be here. How about Darius Garland? And you start to examine the backcourt, Cam Thomas, and all those things. I don't know. I mean, we'll continue to talk about what that fit could look like for Brooklyn potentially. But I find it almost comical that we didn't know anything specifically about the Nets' intentions. And within the last 48 hours, we heard, yes, the Nets are into it, really into it. And then we also heard Cleveland say, not so much. We want to keep Donovan here. We're going to sort it out.
Yeah, this is what happens in these situations. And it's like, it's been a not so secret that the Nets have wanted to move this direction. And these things always just don't, and the cards don't always just kind of like flop down on the table in the perfect order, right? Like it just, you do need things to work out. So I do want to talk a little bit about Garland here, talk a little bit more about Mitchell, because I think there is a defining piece of this Mitchell thing that will tell us, definitively about where he stands with this whole thing. And we might know it soon. We'll talk about all that here in a second. First, going to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn. Look, if you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Look, if you're getting out there in the hiring game, it can be really, really difficult, right? Like you need to find the right person. You need to make sure their skills match. You need to make sure they're just reliable. Look, this is where LinkedIn Jobs can come in and really help you. It's not just another job board. It's a vast network, more than 1 billion. That's with a B, billion professionals. Makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process super easy, very intuitive. Hiring's very easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's less than a day for all you math experts. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, so as we continue the Locked On Nets episode, and it's kind of a pseudo Locked On Cleveland because we're focused. We want to know what's going on with Donovan Mitchell, and now maybe with Darius Garland. You mentioned there, we'll talk about Darius Garland, skill set fit, what that would look like for Brooklyn. But on the Mitchell side of it, it's the extension. That's clearly the telling factor here when it comes to, is it smoke? Is it Donovan Mitchell just trying to say the right things publicly? Cleveland trying to say the right things publicly. We don't want to let Donovan Mitchell go. We want to make it work with him. We want him here. If Cleveland offers the extension, $269 million, and Mitchell says no thank you, well, then that's it. Then all the cards are, it doesn't matter what you're holding in your hand. Everybody knows you wanted out. You didn't want to continue playing Cleveland, right?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, like if he signs the extension, we'll know. If he doesn't sign the extension or he just kind of holds out a little bit on it, then we won't. We always known for a long time he's not going to pick up that player option in 25, 26. He's worth way more on the open market. So that was just kind of over. And God.
And there's no way that Cleveland can risk going. I've said before, they could go into this upcoming season and still reevaluate trading Donovan Mitchell at the deadline, but there's no way that they could offer an extension, have Mitchell say, no, I think I'd rather just play it out. They can't afford to go into a season on an expiring with the player option Donovan Mitchell contract and then know that at the end of the year he could just walk away. Like, Cleveland is not in a position to afford to take that kind of risk at this point. It has to kind of be for them all or nothing ish.
Agreed. They could go in with the idea that, like, let's see how it plays out, or we're going to trade Garland or something like that. And if not, we're totally blowing it up. I don't know. I don't think you have to trade him this summer. It doesn't seem like they would go in. I agree with you. It seems like they would make one organizational decision one way or the other between those two. It would feel super weird to go back into the season with one or the other. Like, if they traded Garland first and rolled the dice and hope that Mitchell would just, re-signed, and then if not, like, they traded him at the deadline and then they have a full blow up piece. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like that's like a little too much wading into the unknown. So I doubt that's a high probability kind of outcome. I mean, I think if you're Cleveland, it seems very clear to me that between the two, you would want Mitchell. Like, if you could just choose, right? Like, if you could just choose between the two guys, I can't imagine a world where they would want Garland over Mitchell if they were just, forced to look at both of the two and just said, "What, you come step forward." Like, I think that, like, the numbers bear it out too, because if you look at where, like, them paired together this year, Mitchell on, Garland off this year, plus almost 9+ net rating. Right. And then Garland on, Mitchell off, they were a negative minus 0.14. Like, they were just it's close. So it's like, let's just call it neutral. They were just a neutral team, Garland, Mitchell, and that was over, 1,100 minutes. So, like, it's a pretty good sample size, all things considered. Both off, they were terrible. On, they were plus. They were still a good team with them both on. But it's just like, it's very clear that when you have Mitchell, you're just choosing between the two. You would just choose Mitchell, but they might be in a spot where they aren't afforded to make that choice.
And you say too, even when they're both on the court and it's still a net positive, but when you show the on off for both of them, you can look at it and say, right, but that's Donovan Mitchell bringing up the value of Darius Garland and everybody else around him. He's that caliber of player.
Well, and by the way, real quick too, if you take it over 2 seasons, because Garland did have a down year this year, and he dealt with some injuries, like he had the jaw issue and he missed some time. The shooting dropped. We saw the 11 points in the Boston closeout game. 30 the game before. So, whatever. I think most people would agree that even with Mitchell off the court, like, it kind of just didn't look right. Those numbers over 2 seasons do start to even out a little bit more. Like, this season, they were really stark. It's more like +6 for Mitchell, +3.5 for Garland. So it's not as bad if you take a larger sample size.
Right.
I guess most people rightfully would look at the more recent one, and the eye test kind of told you some stuff too that wasn't all great. But anyway, just pointing out that I think if Cleveland just had their backs against, they would just be like, we'll just take Mitchell and we'll just see what we can get from Garland. I think that's also going to be harder because the package for Darius Garland would be considerably less, you would think.
Well, and that's kind of, listen, relate it back to the Brooklyn Nets, right? If you have the star versus having really good players, Darius Garland's a good player, right? Okay, so is Mikal Bridges, right? Or, I'm not putting these guys apples to apples, but it's like, well, what's Cam Thomas? Well, we know he can score. We know he can do certain things. We're seeing the development, but what is he going to be long term? If you're sitting there making a choice between him, for the Nets, between him or getting Donovan Mitchell, well, we're going to take Donovan Mitchell. Why? Because he's Donovan Mitchell. He's established. We know what he is. Same thing with Darius Garland. He's only 24 years old. It's unfortunate that you're like, hey, he's just about to start hitting what'll be the prime years of his career, 25, 26, 27. So we don't know. Another team, if you're Cleveland, will say another team may benefit from getting Darius Garland as he starts to evolve, and maybe it's coming off a down year, etc. But you're just so hard pressed to know what you have in a player, Donovan Mitchell, and then make a different choice, unless forced that way based on what Mitchell is telling you he wants or doesn't want. The interesting thing then becomes, to your point, well, what's Darius Garland's value? Because $36 million on the books for him, what can you convert that into if you're Cleveland? Because whether or not he's the perfect component or the perfect complement to Donovan Mitchell, he's still a good player, and you still got to replace that. You still need to get a high-level scorer to put alongside Mitchell in Cleveland. And we've talked about before whether it's the free agent market or then start to look at some other disgruntled guys, like whether or not it fits or otherwise. My mind immediately goes to New Orleans and what's happening with Brendan Ingram, and are they going to make a change? Okay, maybe you start to swirl those types of ideas around and reconfigure things with Cleveland, and whether or not that makes sense for another team to take Garland in that contract that's already set in place.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was going to say, because that's like sort of the bigger issue. It's like the 36 this year is one thing. It's the 45 in 4 years from now. Like that's the bigger question. Again, still young, but definitely took a hit with value the way that this year played out. So it's not as like this. I think Mitchell, you sign Mitchell, you kind of just like know exactly what you're getting. Older, but you kind of know where he is on the NBA pecking order at this point, and you feel probably pretty good about it. Like, you know exactly what's coming in the door. This is why his value is higher. It's like, I know exactly what it is. I know pretty much exactly where he ranks in the overall NBA landscape. Let's say, plus minus 3 players, 4 players, something like that on either side, right? I think you guaranteed know that. With Garland, it's just not as a slam dunk, right? Like, I don't necessarily mean like, Mitchell's like some slam dunk championship player. I just like slam dunk. I just know exactly what I'm getting. With Garland, there's a world where 45 million in 4 years from now looks like a disaster. There's a world where it looks fine. Like, I don't want to take this one season. I think there's plenty of people that have their stock still fine on him, but it's clearly the worst of the situation. And I don't know what the open market would look like for him with that contract. Like, there would be one for sure. Like, there would be teams that would be interested. I no doubt about that.
Can I ask you
just that?
Sorry, go ahead.
It's just that, like, some insane, 3 first-round picks and a player like, I just don't see that kind of package materializing.
I know we're going to talk about, the potential with the Brooklyn Nets and how that looks, but it just popped into my head here about, we're talking about pivots for any team, pivots for Cleveland, pivots for Brooklyn. If you are the LA Lakers and you're in on wanting to make a package for Donovan Mitchell, but he's going to stay, maybe Darius Garland is a guy that you do look at there when you just think about, okay, it's LeBron James, it's Anthony Davis, and then when they move on, at least we have a young talented piece. To your point about just teams where it would make sense, where the risk of that contract could still pan out. Well, if you know that LeBron can't play until he's 50, we don't think, then you're going to see, some money coming off the books there. You still have Anthony Davis at 31, 32. At least you keep a young player there, especially if you're considering making a decision around D'Angelo Russell this offseason too. Like, so it's really just quickly to be like, hey, remember that little bubble that included Donovan Mitchell, the Brooklyn Nets, and the LA Lakers 2 days ago? That bubble can still be impacted right here by this. Is he staying or going, Donovan Mitchell? And then is Garland a viable option? But that price point matters. And if you don't move Mitchell in your Cleveland, what are you asking for Darius Garland? Because are you then looking at it and saying, well, we got to turn him into something, so maybe our asking price needs to be a little bit higher, because it's going to be a partial rebuild here to make sure we keep Donovan Mitchell happy and excited about their next contract extension over 4 years. So I find it really fascinating about whether or not a player like Darius Garland is attractive to other teams on the level of 2 first-round picks, on the level of taking on $45 million going 3 and 4 years down the line. Does Brooklyn find that palatable? Let's take a look at how he would fit into the Brooklyn Nets lineup. Whether or not a Cam Thomas, Darius Garland backcourt is the answer for the Nets' future, we'll dive into that coming up next.
All right, before we get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. That's a formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle. You'll level it up to peak performance. They got superchargers. They got roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guarantee Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. They'll bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
So as we tie a bow on the Locked On Nets episode, reminder, get us over on YouTube. Turn on the alerts so you know when we're going live. Follow show MVP Doug Norrie at Doug Norrie over on X, and at Adam Armbrecht as well.
That was internal team voting, by the way.
I'm not. Listen,
two-person vote. That wasn't the fan vote.
We opened it up. It was all organizational decision. And as I said over on X, I voted with my heart. I let my gut lead the way, and I was shocked with the outcome.
We opened up the ballot box. First vote, Doug. Second vote, Doug. Voting over.
Yeah,
That was
I thought it was the complimentary thing. Oh, I'll vote for my opponent. He ran such a great campaign, but it turns out a little bit undercut. I feel
we'll both vote
slighted.
for each other. We'll both vote for each other, and then we'll feel good. Nope,
Yep.
you vote
Nope.
for me, I vote for myself, and then and that's the end.
At the end of the day, when we talk about most improved player, which Doug I think also took that award home this season as well, it's worth noting Darius Garland. That's 2021. He finished third in most improved player voting, and we talk about this a lot, just how quickly things come at you. Well, now we're talking about Darius. We're not downplaying him, but is he worth it? This contract, 36 and 40 million. He was ascending, but a moment ago, and it's not like
He's an all-star.
Yeah, right, an all-star in that season as well. And you're like, I guess I'll take a shot on him if you guys don't want him. But maybe that makes this the perfect kind of pivot for Brooklyn. If Donovan Mitchell is staying in Cleveland, hey, his stock's a little down. You guys need to get this money off the books. We do have options that we can send your way in terms of picks. We have some players. Maybe we can work something out. So if we just think about that on a high level for a second, in terms of getting, let's say that the Nets look at it at that situation and believe Darius Garland, we would take a shot on that in the backcourt with Cam Thomas. Talk about the fit in a minute. Well, you have like a Dorian Finney-Smith that we've talked about needing to move on from. That's actually a nice piece to go send to Cleveland to add to Donovan Mitchell's team to make that an improvement for them over there. Is there other players? I mean, heck, you could even say Dennis Schroeder would make a lot of sense for them. He has 1 year remaining. Just like that, you're up over 25, 26 million in cap to send out the door to Cleveland. Now, it's still going to involve picks. That's the veteran version of this, which I don't think, over excites Cleveland. They need another really high caliber player to pair with Donovan Mitchell. But let's start there do you think veterans and maybe a pick of some kind, assets that the Nets aren't long-term really beholden to, could that actually be enough to get Darius Garland over to Brooklyn? And would you be fine with that? Hey, it's a couple of veterans and maybe a pick or two.
I think I would probably do that. I mean, I know fans aren't going to want to hear that because they're going to look at Garland's season and be like, no chance. And it's like hard to think you're buying low on him because of the contract, because you're not. Because like you can have a down season and think you're buying low, but like then you
still look
out at the contract
and
it doesn't
sticker
really,
price.
Yeah, like because we talk plenty about guys like, oh, you're getting them a little bit of a low value here. Is that what you're getting? But it's like, kind of like the Brunson situation. You buy super low because of the situation. You sign him to a really team friendly contract for what he is and the way you go. Like you're not really getting anything in the Garland situation. I also think that's probably that's a really good package for a guy his a caliber of player that he is, right? I think that like, 2 players like that in a pick, I mean, that'd be like, I would do that in a second. I don't think that would be enough. But again, I do think sometimes, like, I know fans are going to say, I know what the comments are going to say. It's going to be, no, thanks, like Garland. But I think that that's probably being a little short-sighted with him. But does that make sense? I think that like it's just so front of mind that he was like had some struggles, but I just don't want to put that as like write the whole rest of his career on that. I just don't think that's true.
Yeah, I mean, remember going back to his all-star most improved player, third finishing in voting season. I mean, he averaged over 8 assists. Those have come down over the past couple of seasons. But, if you think that he's a 7 to 8 assist guy a game, he's a guy that's knocked down the three-point ball efficiently enough, came down to 37% this year. He's 41% on volume last season. He's decent from the field. Listen, he's not a perfect model of player, but he can do some things on ball that the Nets desperately lack inside of their offensive system. If we think about it at the high level, like we talk about even trading for Donovan Mitchell, well, does that make the Nets a championship team? No, it doesn't. What's the next move? Trading for Darius Garland does not make you X. I don't know. Does it make you a top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference? Maybe not. But in the same model of, well, what's your next step? I can paint a picture where having Darius Garland and having Cam Thomas, we'll talk about that backcourt fit to close out. But okay, we have those 2 players, and we still have Mikal Bridges, and we still have Cameron Johnson here. Now, who's the player we go and add next offseason? It's still about pursuing a high-level name. Darius Garland will look better if he's behind player X. And if you're a fan and you look at Cleveland, you say, yeah, but Donovan Mitchell didn't like playing with him. Right, but that's different. You're talking about backcourt companions. I want to go out and get a forward. I want to get the highest-rated forward that I can get on the free agent market, and now all of a sudden you fit those pieces in place. The price tag is still high, but, I mean, someone asked this to us in the comments the other day on YouTube, and I said, it's a small backcourt that you're, pairing together there. So I wasn't overly excited about it. But if you're Brooklyn, you need to kind of be willing to play in the waters of the options that are available to you. It's just a matter of, does the 4 years of his contract remaining make it feel like we're going to talk about a year from now, oh, because of the Garland contract, it prevents us from doing X, Y, or Z. That would
I think
be the biggest deterrent. And I don't think that'd be the case.
Yeah, I think that's like just the biggest problem, right? It's just
Right.
that the contract just goes out a little too long. It's like a little unexciting, right? It's not a splash. I'm sure Marks, they just want to make a splash at this point. It really feels like this would not represent that. And I'm not even saying it's like a super sound move either. This one we're a little more wishy-washy on. Again, though, I think the price is a little bit lower. Garland and Cam together in the backcourt would be a defensive train wreck.
Yes.
And they'd be really, really problematic for a team that's already kind of struggled there, like sort of defending opposing backcourts. So that would be pretty unexciting. I don't know. Like this is the, with the Mitchell thing, I think we spoke pretty, or at least, I mean, I feel like I did spoke pretty definitively about like, if it's an overpay, it feels like a really big mistake. Right.
Yeah.
And the Garland one, I think would probably be a mistake, but for like a different reason. But I also don't think it would be like basketball wise so unsound. And I just do wonder if if his season this year just dropped the value. And I'm repeating myself a little bit, but again, value down, but contract doesn't move. And that's just a weird, tricky spot to be in. So I don't know. This one's not as crystal clear to me. Although I can tell you right now that if the Nets traded for Garland, I mean, fans talk about not what you wanted to see. Like that would be really pretty impressive, because it'd be like, well, they didn't blow it up and they didn't get the star. And now they're just kind of churning along with a $45 million small guard who kind of had a down season. And so I think like that more than anything would predispose the front office from not even considering it.
And the contract of that as well. It's not, oh, we're taking a quote, buy low chance on Darius Garland, and the contract lines up with, Mikal Bridges and with Cameron Johnson. So in a couple of seasons, if it doesn't work out, we can move on. It's having that money occupied well beyond some of these other contracts on your books. Quickly, I'll just let you know, straight up trade Ben Simmons, Darius Garland. That works perfectly. The money is right there. So always a possibility. Always want to keep those options open. And I've heard reported now, as we say, also our sources, my source, Doug Norrie, told me that the Cleveland Cavaliers believe Donovan Mitchell will be very intrigued about playing with Ben Simmons. He's very interested in the prospect of that. Yeah, but now that's from Doug Norrie, so you can go ahead and follow him over on all the social media platforms.
Say stuff like that, people are going to believe you. Like,
it's a dangerous game. But listen, I've lost all the internal voting for the organization, so I really got to try to turn myself around here. It'll be interesting to see how this does play out, though. And obviously, if it's not Mitchell, if the Nets just at a high level, if they miss on Donovan Mitchell, or it's not an option, that does become more intriguing here. What is the pivot? Because you are outwardly acknowledging we're trying to do something this offseason. If it can't be Mitchell, what are you going to do? Or will you quietly fall back to the, long term, see us next summer. Don't worry about what's going on right now. No need to look behind the curtain.
But over on Fanspo, who has a great trade machine, here I'm going to give you the top, and we'll get out of here. The top trending players being traded, like just everyone just burning the servers out over at Fanspo. Here's your rankings. Ready? Number 1, Donovan Mitchell. Number 2, Darius Garland. Number 3, Jared Allen. 4, Brandon Ingram. 5, DeJounte Murray. 6, creeping his head up, George Niang. Getting thrown in all those different trades. 7, Karis LeVert. 8, Mikal Bridges. So that's what's kind of going on with how people are running through the trade machine. We're going to get out of
the episode without talking about George Niang's value. I mean, I feel like we really missed the mark here. We got to read the
trade machine, darling. We're going to get out of here. Make sure you subscribe over on YouTube to Locked On and Nets. Keep those comments coming too. Tons of comments over the last few days. Really, really appreciate that. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Rule number 1 is never lose money. Rule number 2 is never forget rule number 1. Why that is Warren Buffett.
Oh, just had their earnings meeting the other day. Always fascinating to see where all that money's going. And the Oracle of Omaha, one of the all-time great poets, will be back again next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. I'm the MVP. Basketball. Yeah.